Hey, it's Mark Hicks. Hello. What am I doing with my cowboy hat on when I'm not playing with the snowmen? I thought the rule was you only wear your stage clothing when you're on stage with the snowmen, which is true. Even if I sit in with another band, I don't wear my stage clothing. I only wear that with the snowmen. But I am on my way to Spearman, Texas. I'm in the car, as you plainly can see. And Spearman, Texas was my first radio job. And this is going to be an interesting thing. Part of the reason I'm wearing the cowboy hat is I don't want to look like a Yankee, although the Minnesota plates might give me away a little bit. But, back when I worked here in Spearman, right now I'm in Kansas, getting close to Liberal, Kansas. So Liberal, Kansas, we used to, when I worked in Spearman was a dry county. Sometimes would drive up to Liberal, Kansas to buy beer. Me and Bobby Joe from the radio station. He was a disc jockey who worked there along with me and my roommate. And, I'll finish this video when I get to Spearman. But so we went up there one night to Liberal, and we got there too late. All the liquor stores were closed. I can't remember what the age limit was at that point for Liberal, Kansas. It's kind of funny though. I do remember Oklahoma Panhandle, where we went to Guyman, Oklahoma once in a while and bought beer there. And the age limit in Oklahoma was 21 if you were a guy and 18 if you were a girl. Girls matured faster. And I believe, if I have my statistics correct, that to get married without parental permission back then, the age was 16 for a guy and 14 for a girl. You had to be at least 14 if you were a girl to get married without parental permission. I don't think it's quite the same way now. But, so anyway, we drove up to Liberal, Kansas. Liquor stores were closed. And we had to find some beer, and we talked to a guy. It's like, we're trying to buy some beer, but everything's closed. He goes, you need to go over to the bootleggers. So, what was that? Well, it was a guy that sold guys, or, an area that sold liquor or beer or whatever out of their house illegally without a license. They weren't actually selling moonshine or, anything like, well, they might have been, actually. I don't know that. All we wanted was beer. And so he gave us the directions to the bootleggers, and he goes, you turn here, road turns into a dirt road, you follow that down, you'll start to see a couple of shacks and a few smaller homes, and the fourth one down after the right turn, whatever directions he gave me, little shack, tar paper shack, and knock on the door and tell them that you want to buy some beer. Okay? Away we go. So we drive to the shack, counted them down, however, whatever directions he gave us, knocked on the door, and this old black gentleman answers the door. He goes, yeah? And we go, well, we're trying to buy some beer. And then we were told that you would sell us some. All the liquor stores are cold, are closed, and we don't.
Proceed on US 54.
We don't have any. We want to buy some beer. And he goes,
Proceed
well, I don't
on
know about you
US
guys. He didn't
54.
It was clear right from the start. This guy did not trust us at all. And so I came up with the idea. Hey, we're not cops or anything. We'll show you our IDs. So I pulled out my
Proceed
Texas
on
license
US
plate.
54.
Or license. I'm getting distracted by the GPS here. Pulled out my driver's license, showed it to
Proceed
him.
on US
And
54.
why does GPS tell you to proceed on the highway
US 54.
that you're currently on over and over and over again? I don't understand it. Okay. I showed him my driver's license, and he looked it over. I'm not sure if he could read. We handed him our licenses. He looked them over. All right, come on in. So went into his house, and very nice at that point. Now he warmed up to us, and we got along great with him. And looked like he lived alone, He's kind of sad, a little bit lonely old man.
Proceed on
And
US 54.
I'm proceeding on US 54. So he opened up his fridge, and there it was, stocked with my favorite beer, Coors, and bought the Coors, and away we went. Got 2 6-packs and back down to Spearman. So anyway, that's my Liberal, Kansas story here in Liberal. My goal is when I get to Spearman, when I was actually the news director of the radio station, and when I was news director, I dealt with the sheriff's department quite a bit, and the sheriff was Sheriff R.L. McFarland, spelled McFarlane but pronounced McFarland, and the sheriff got along with them. He was, I think the only reason he put up with me is I was a Yankee and all that, but the guy who owned the radio station and him were good friends, and he was also, the owner of the radio station was also the mayor of the town, Spearman. So, and they got along really tightly. Not so much with Chief of Police Lee Phillips. A little bit different story there, which I probably could tell the story. Maybe when I get to Spearman I will. But my goal is to track down, well, I'm not going to track him down. I know where to go. I'm going to go to the current sheriff's office, same office, current sheriff, and I believe his name is Mahaffey, Sheriff Mahaffey. And I want to take some pictures in there and stuff. They got pictures going back of, the old sheriffs, and one of them has a double-barrel shotgun with a couple of dogs. And I was thinking, God, he looks like he's going to go out pheasant hunting or something. It's like, and then as time went on, it's like, I don't think there's a lot of pheasant hunting going on around here. That was for tracking people. So I definitely want to get that picture. But hopefully I can meet the sheriff in Spearman. And if R.L. McFarland is still alive, so I'm 69 years old. Sheriff McFarland, when I was 20 and working in Spearman, would have been approximately 40, maybe 35, but let's say 40. So if you add that to 79, 80, 99. So he's 25 years older than me. I'm 69, 79, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, let's say. So he could still be alive and in his 90s. And if it's possible, I'm going to try to track down where he is and see if I can talk to him and see if he remembers any of the stories and stuff. I'm kind of, hoping on a wing and a prayer on that one. I just don't think that's going to happen. Hey, it's Mark Hicks. I'm in Spearman, Texas. I'm standing in front of the building that used to house KBMF FM, my first radio job ever. And as you can see, it's shut down now. They shut it down, and the station transferred to Perryton, Texas, which is about 25 miles west of here. And it's pretty fascinating. So there's 2 windows. You can see there's the main door. The window just behind me was where the receptionist worked, and the other window was where Coy Palmer worked. He was the owner of the station and mayor of Spearman at the time. And then over here was his house. He lived right next door to the radio station. Let me see if I can walk around here a little bit. So a lot of interesting radio stories to tell about this place. And there is the tower. Okay, so when I worked here, when I started, I was doing 6 to 10 at night, and disc jockey. And I used to park my car. This used to be a driveway right here in back of the station. And that door right there was the door of the transmitter, if I can get a shot of that. And then here's the tower. And I'd park my car under it. We signed off at 10 o'clock at night. And with this tower above my car, as I was parked right here, I could pick up radio stations from all over the country. In fact, I was so lonely at the time, missing Minnesota and everything, that I would pick up KSTP out of St. Paul. It's like, oh my God, they just mentioned New Brighton. It was just insane, the things that I would see and hear. And I'd pick up KOMA, and I'd pick up KAAY out of Little Rock. A little side story about that. I eventually worked with the engineer, a guy who was an engineer at KAAY in Little Rock. His name was Hollis. And he told me this Beaker Street, the famous show that came out of there, a lot of people have never heard this or knew this, and that was, he told me that. So Beaker Street was KWAY Little Rock, which was a 50,000 watt radio station and broadcast all over the country. And a lot of people would listen to it, even back in Minnesota and stuff like that. Clear channel radio station. There's people here when you're out of town, boy, they notice you. And this is an interesting. So anyway, the station was 50,000 watts. The main station was downtown Little Rock, Arkansas, but their transmitter was actually about 50 miles out of town, is what he told me. And when you listen to Beaker Street, they always had these spacey noises going on. I thought it was so cool. Well, he told me that those spacey noises, the FCC required that they did so much time from the transmitter site. You couldn't just, broadcast all your stuff downtown. They had a regulation. You had to do so much time from the transmitter site. And so the overnight shift was the one that did the time out of the transmitter site, and that was Beaker Street. And that was the one that went across the country. And the noises were to help block out the transmitter blower noises. Cooler, the transmitters were so hot, back then and stuff, and I'm sure they still are, that the blowers would keep them cool, and they were so loud that they covered it up with that noise. So that's a little side note. Anyway, here's the deal here's a couple of things about Spearman. My first job here, God, I didn't think it would be emotional, and it's kind of emotional. It's also kind of a little bit scary. When I first moved down here, I was probably 20, I suppose, 19. I had no idea what I was doing with anything. I didn't know anything. And so I came down here not knowing anything, and I got off the bus, and I'd been here for a couple of weeks, and I'm the new radio announcer in town, and one of the guys comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you're a Yankee, ain't you?" And I go, No, I'm not. I'm actually from Minnesota. I'm not a Yankee. I've never even been to New York. You're a northerner. It's like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm a northerner. I didn't even think of it, never even thought of it that way. And then he goes, we should have won that war. And I'm going, I was thinking Vietnam, because it was probably 1976 when this was going on. And I said, yeah, I know. And I didn't know it. Like I said, I didn't know anything. I tried to BS my way around, like I knew something about Vietnam, even though I would have been drafted had it not ended. But I said something like, yeah, the Tet Offensive failed, and, Mao Zedong, got involved. I just making up junk. And he goes, not the Vietnam War, the Civil War, you idiot. And then he later shocked me between the legs in my unmentionables with a cattle prod. So, and nobody here really liked me very much at all. No, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but generally speaking, I was the outsider, and I remember I spent Christmas alone here, my first Christmas away from home alone. I'll tell you what, it's sad to be away from home for your first Christmas ever, but when you're alone, and when I say alone, I mean, I lived half a block from here. I'm going to head down there in a second. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a TV. I had a small radio. So I could only listen to this station because KBMF was the only station that we could actually get in. So yeah, I was alone on Christmas, and that is a tearjerker. So if you ever run into a situation where somebody who is, alone at Christmas, invite them over, help them out a little bit. People are driving by me. So, and looking like, hey, what are you doing there? Here's another interesting story. I was the news director, and how they put me in charge of news was beyond me. I didn't know anything, barely graduated from high school, but I somehow did pretty good at Brown Institute. Not good enough to get a great radio job. I mean, this is where I started, and this is where nobody wanted to go, and I didn't care. I'll take the first radio job that comes along. I just want to get started. And that was my philosophy at the time. got out of Brownstew, came down here, got the Yankee thing going on, and they made me news director. And now I'm covering news stories. And there was a sheriff working here that I'd call on the sheriff. I'd call on the county commissioner, chief commissioner, or whatever he was. I'd go to the city council meetings. I would go to the fire meetings, the fire council meetings, anything really. And I worked pretty closely with the sheriff's department, really, more than the police department. The mayor, who owned the radio station here, Coy Palmer, did not like the chief of police, who was Lee Phillips. In fact, I would even say that he hated him. And I don't know what kind of relationship the sheriff had with the police chief, but this radio station here was definitely on the sheriff's side. The sheriff was our buddy, and we support, I shouldn't say we, they supported him. I read the announcements on the air. I read the news stories. I read the editorials, things like, at Lee Phillips, he's got to get his act together. There's cars, and they would just start listing off stuff like abandoned cars on the side of the road, garbage not being cared. Somehow Lee Phillips was blamed for, abandoned junked cars. It's like, I'm sure he wasn't really the guy to blame, because if that were the case, they could just call a tow truck and tow it away. And I'm sure Lee Phillips would have done a good job. I only met him once, and after all these editorials and stuff, I came around the corner, and there I was face to face with Lee Phillips after reading all these anti-Lee Phillips editorials on the air. And I was the one voicing them, but people in town here knew that I didn't have anything to do with it. They would even say, "We know you don't write those things. I can tell by the way they're written." So anyway, Sheriff McFarland one time gave me a news story over the phone, and he goes, "Yeah, here you go. We got a murder." It was something very serious, and I think it was actually a murder. And he mentioned the case is going to be going to the grand jury. And somehow, in my ignorance of not knowing anything, like I said, by the time the story hit the air that I had written, I had turned the grand jury, getting killed by flies out here, turned the grand jury into the Supreme Court. And I don't think it was attempted murder or police believe he was murdered. It was a guy murdered a guy, and now it's going to the Supreme Court. So, you don't get away with that too much. And Sheriff McFarland came down to the radio station. And Sheriff McFarland, here was their uniforms back then. Cowboy hat, very similar to this, Stetson. And a dress shirt, white dress shirt, pair of dress slacks, and cowboy boots. No gun. Sheriff McFarland did not carry a gun that I could see. I know the Chief Deputy Matson carried a 2-shot Derringer in his back belt. I don't even think he had a holster. But, classic Western. And then a star on the dress shirt, and that was his uniform. Anyway, he was about 6'4", and he came up to me, and he got me up against the wall right here in the station. And he said, "Don't you ever put anything like that on the air without running by. Where are you coming up with the Supreme Court stuff?" And I don't know. I thought that's what you told me. I didn't tell you anything. And the only thing I could do is like, my God, I've got the sheriff ready to just beat the daylights out of me. And I go, I'm really sorry. I just didn't even realize, what I was doing. It's about all I could come up with. And eventually, after I said that a couple times, he goes, "All right, watch it. And from now on, run these stories by me before you put them on the air so this doesn't happen." Something like that. And I go, "Oh, yeah, I'll do whatever you say." I am in full agreement. All right, here I am in front of the Spearman, Hansford County Sheriff's Department. And I'm downtown. This is the edge of downtown. People drive by and they look at, yeah, that's what they do here. Anyway, I'm gonna go in now. I'm gonna shut off the video. I don't think cops particularly like videos under any circumstances. So here I go. I'll report back. There we go. Isn't that amazing? Look at these guys. I wonder what it was like being a sheriff back then.
Probably a lot easier than it was now.
Yeah, probably.
A lot less rules, regulations.
Yeah. How long have you been sheriff? So I just got done meeting the sheriff. I could have filmed him and interviewed him probably, but for some reason it feels disrespectful to do that. He was a super nice guy and knew a lot of the people. Sheriff R.L. McFarland did die, and sadly, and told him the story about getting in trouble with Sheriff McFarland. Told him about how we did tornado warnings back then. All right, I'm gonna head out of Spearman now and continue my trip down to Dallas. And it was fun reliving the memories. The sheriff was a super nice guy, and it was a pleasure to meet him, Sheriff Mahaffey. And thank you for watching the video. I don't know if there's any practical wisdom in this, except when I got in trouble with Sheriff McFarland, and the only way I could get out of it was to humble myself.